In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, David Bonnet Foundation, and these funders, and by the annual support of In the Life members like you.
It's sexual orientation, which he said covers about 30 different pathologies.
LGBT people know it when we hear it. The lies and misinformation that inspire bias against our community.
I'm opposed to an older guy marrying a child and calling that a marriage.
When does bias turn to hate?
Homosexual sodomy destroys people who practice it and nations that approve of it.
Can hearing hate speak lead to violence?
As a possible
Tonight on In the Life, documenting the issues and people shaping the gay experience. We talk to victims and perpetrators about the nature of hate.
I was led to believe that in order for me to save the country, I had to do what the authorities were afraid to do.
And later, we visit photographer Alix Smith, who's traveling the country photographing hundreds of same-sex couples, challenging stereotypes, and taking conventional portraiture to a new level.
I was in Chelsea looking for a nightclub. I see a group of guys walking towards me. And I stopped him and I asked him, "Do you know where this nightclub is at?" And he's just staring at me. He gives me this deep, awful gaze. So I was ready to walk away, and he asks me, "So you're a faggot?" And I turn around. And God, I wish I didn't turn around. I've asked myself so many times, I just can't make sense of why someone would do that.
An openly gay 15-year-old boy who was murdered.
Investigating whether a shooting that wounded 3 people inside a gay bar was a hate crime.
A woman says that her attackers targeted her because she's a lesbian.
Yelled anti-Hispanic and anti-gay slurs.
The statistics are startling. There are about 12,000 hate-biased crimes based on sexual orientation alone over the last decade. In the last year that the FBI reported, which I believe was for 2007, there were over 7,600 hate-biased crimes in this country.
In my research, and this is with non-criminal young adults, a very high number, especially of the young men, admitted to some form of anti-gay behavior. About 18% of the men admitted to actual physical assaults.
What we notice with hate crimes or hate violence incidents, there's this phenomena of overkill. Whereas it may only take someone 1 or 2 stabbings to murder somebody. We've documented incidents of where someone may have been stabbed 30 or 40 times during the course of a hate crime incident. People are beaten much more brutally, will be shot more times than someone who's just carrying out a crime that doesn't involve a hate element. So overkill is a very big part of this type of violence. The recent murder of Jorge Steven Lopez Mercado in Puerto Rico, a 19-year-old, he was brutally murdered, dismembered, burned. So those are the type of incidents that we see when there's a hate crime.
Somebody yelled, "Tonight, the faggots die." And we just went for it. The best way to describe that evening was that it's sort of like taking a remote control and pressing fast forward. It's like really, really fast, adrenaline. And a human being was left in a pool of blood in an alley in West Hollywood.
1, 2, 3, 4!
The best way to describe myself is that I'm a former skinhead. Late 70s, early 80s, and there was a lot of violence that was involved. I was the person who initiated the majority of the confrontations because I knew that I had to prove myself. And at that time in Hollywood, there was a rapidly growing gay community, and at times we clashed. This particular evening, we were already involved with violence that night. We left the concert and we were on our way to the hamburger stand. And we had probably stopped 2 or 3 times simply to get out of the car and beat somebody up. I mean, violence was in the air. It was like we were a pack of rabid wolves on the prowl looking for trouble.
A typical hate crime offender against gay people specifically, and we can't generalize too much, but it tends to be young males, teenagers, and early 20s, and most often in a group. In my research, what I've come to think of it as, they're performing a spectacle for their friends, and they're trying to prove something to their friends, and that's why it's committed in a group, with the victim really being a symbol which they can act against.
And as his friends are all kicking me and punching me, they're also calling me a faggot. They're also calling me a sucker and they're really getting a kick out of this. And I could see it in their faces. I could see that while he's as serious as he can be and he's as enraged as he can be, the others are watching him do this to me. And they're smirking and they're laughing and they're kinking and they're stomping and calling me names.
There are a variety of motivations. Everybody is an individual, even when they're a member of a group. But typically, the group motivation has to do with proving masculinity. Masculinity for young men, it's not something that they are automatically born with or just automatically have happen to them. They have to establish it. This is the age group of, teenagers, adolescents, young adults. They're trying to cement their identity in the world, and as part of that, they want to be a proper man. And if they don't show that in some way, there's a fear that they're not masculine. It's a very deep-seated fear, I think.
Years ago, I would say, oh, no, I'm not. I'm a big macho skinhead, don't you know? I always thought that it was important for me to continue with that macho posturing or, being the big tough guy. I truly think one of the main reasons is because I was a scared little boy. Even up until, a few years ago, a scared little boy.
When I realized what had happened that night, I started to piece everything together. I was just further devastated. Everyone seems to focus on that one event, the attack, the gay bashing itself. No one seems to understand that the situation is much bigger than just an attack or just someone being hurt, someone being called a name, someone getting beat up.
We've come against this hate crimes bill, Lord. We've come against it. We've spoken to representatives of our government.
Homosexual sodomy destroys people who practice it and nations that approve of it.
Messages of hate, anti-gay messages don't exist in a vacuum.
You cannot continue to take moral wrongs and turn them into civil rights and survive as a people.
What we know is that these anti-gay activists and many political leaders who speak out and rail against the LGBT community are sending a message that it's okay to hate.
Someone might hold some very hateful beliefs, but we're America. Shouldn't they be allowed to hold those beliefs?
And that message feeds down through the culture. It trickles down in the things that young people hear in the schoolyard and how they react and respond. It trickles down into the ways in which people can relate and be respected and valued in their communities.
People who are perceived as LGBT are particularly vulnerable to violence because of the institutional or legalized discrimination that we have in this country against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. If you look at the Civil Rights Act generally, we're excluded from all of those protections. The Don't Ask, Don't Tell policies, the Defense of Marriage Act, all of those types of federal policies are laws that explicitly discriminate against us. Well, I think that sends the message that we are not equal in the eyes of the law, which means we are less than or other in the eyes of our society.
No matter how much the world is changing, I find at the heart of many conversations, people still think of us as deviant.
We don't know where homos came from. We don't know where lesbians came from.
We believe that homosexuality is destructive to society.
It's nasty. It's disgusting.
And so if I believe that a person who participates in a homosexual relationship, that person is somehow anti-family, or their very existence threatens the way of life for people who are heterosexual and people who consider themselves morally upright. If you believe that, then what conversation is there?
There used to be this idea that young guys that attacked gays were afraid that they were gay, and they were just sort of defensively responding because of their own mixed sexual feelings. And, that could be true for some people. But in general, that has not been established by the research. And it looks more like young guys who do these group assaults in particular, they have this sense of cultural entitlement.
I mean, I don't want no man blowing me a kiss either. I mean, things happen. I mean, I've been beat up like that too, but you don't see me on the news and my family crying and this and that. Wounds heal.
Like they have the right, or they should be helping to control social deviance by keeping people who violate gender norms in their place.
Who has this biblical quote tattooed on his shoulder.
Leviticus 18:22, you shall not lay with another man as one does with a woman, for it is an abomination.
I was led to believe that in order for me to save the country, I had to go out and I had to do what the authorities were afraid to do. I had never had any sort of experience or relationship with somebody that was positive from the gay community.
It's our culture that tells young people that they can go out and beat people up for whatever reason. It's really just a matter of degree. If everybody's saying, hey, faggot this and even bitch that about women or girls, it's just a matter of degree before those attitudes can translate into something more physical.
We cannot survive if we sodomize our sons and our daughters.
We see the statistics of people being beat up and oftentimes killed because of who they are. And so we know the effects that this language has. And when we live in a society of free speech, and I will defend those folks' rights to the day I die to say what they want to say, but I will not defend their rights to promote violence and to say that it's okay to kill and beat up gay people.
All right.
After more than a decade of opposition and delay, we've passed inclusive hate crimes legislation to help protect our citizens from violence based on what they look like, who they love, how they pray, or who they are.
It is often thought that hate crimes legislation is our issue. And so once hate crimes legislation was passed, our issue is done, and successfully done, and congratulations. And there is legitimacy to what hate crimes legislation can do for our communities, but that is not only not the sum total of what we're trying to do in moving policy, but it's actually not even the most important part of what we're trying to do in move policy, because it is so punitive and it is so reactive. What we want to see is a shift in attitude, a shift in culture.
When the message out there is so horrible that to be gay, you can get killed for it, we need to change the message.
Hate, it's like a disease, like a cancer. And I think until we as a society go after the causes, not what happens afterwards, not the effects of hate, but the cause of the hate. Because you could cut out something and it can still be there. You have to find the cause, cure the cause, and you'll cure the hate.
I don't want you to burn in hell, fully joyful in the presence of the Almighty God.
In the Life, documenting the issues and people shaping the gay experience.
One day you'll appreciate it. We appreciate it. Well, you do, but they'll appreciate it when they're a little older.
Good job, buddy. Okay, look at the camera.
Oh, perfect. This is so good. Okay. To me, I love photographing people in their own environment because it's like a set. It's like a stage. Everything in your house or your apartment, you've put there for a reason, and it says something about you.
I am really sorry, guys. You're so good. You smiling?
My name's Alix Smith. I am an artist, photographer. Right now I'm working on a project called States of Union, which focuses on gay and lesbian couples and families, playing off classical paintings in some way. I grew up on the Upper East Side of New York. I went to an all-girls Catholic private school. I always felt sort of out of place, which is why photography was so important. When I was coming out, there weren't any positive gay role models out there. Everyone, most of the people in movies either turned out to be straight, died a drug-induced death, or were a victim of hate crime.
The unfortunate problem with gay representation is you have extremes. Either everyone is elegant and perfect, or they're sluts and depraved and decadent. What she shows us is normalcy. Everyday people in everyday situations.
There was someone who told me a story that their parent had been very conservative. And he said, God, I wish I was just normal. And this idea that he was growing up thinking he wasn't normal. I found it very sad. It's hard growing up in a society where the stereotypes are so prevalent that you begin to believe them yourself. And I think that part of the project is to dispel those stereotypes and to allow people to embrace who they are.
A little smile.
How the shoots are set up is I contact the family and I give them about 20 images that I think might work. And because portraiture is so much a collaboration between the artist and the sitter, I want them to have a say. So they're given the images and I ask them, Pick which one you think would most describe you or is most akin to your family. For them, I chose the Renoir. The photo doesn't necessarily end up looking like the painting. It's just a jumping off point.
Well, I just saw the dog and I was like, this is the one that had a dog and it had 2 kids and had, it only had one mom, but I figured, we'll just add another. I actually showed it to the boys. I was like, what do you think?
Which one do you want to be?
Yeah, and the dog was like, that one.
Oh, man. When we got married, we really decided that we would never sort of leave it to chance anymore for people to know that we were a couple and that we were a family. We just have to treat ourselves as full human beings and never compartmentalize any piece of who we are. And that's exactly what she's doing. She just is capturing the fullness of what a family can look like.
All art is narcissistic, essentially. So you make something because it interests you. So this idea that I was gay, that I didn't really see a lot of images that were like me, and sort of wanting to create those images. I mean, that's where it started from.
I think anyone who's going to enjoy these pictures will spend a great deal of time trying to figure out the details, because once you get past the fact that they're supposed to be art, we really only care about the people in the pictures. And we're trying to read their stories. We're trying to see how their stories are similar to our stories.
We're a group of people that don't have a visual legacy. And I think it has a lot to do with sort of psychologically how we see ourselves. Because when you open an art history book and you're straight and you can see these images that is sort of defining who you are or what group you fit into, and being gay or lesbian, you don't have those images. So part of the concept is starting off with these paintings, starting off with this language of portraiture, and from there building our own visual legacy.
There is this long history of art being a device to bring the public's attention to things that might not be right in front of them, might not be surrounding them.
Photography's always been used for social change. I mean, if you look at Dorothea Lange, for instance, the migrant mother image that's so famous, I mean, that image created a whole movement to help those farmers. By the government, by volunteers, by donations. Even Annie Leibowitz's image of Demi Moore when she was pregnant, it was the first time you saw a pregnant woman on the cover of a magazine. And at that point, it was something that you covered up, that you were not ashamed of, but you didn't flaunt it. And from there, women started to embrace pregnancy and their bodies, and it changed people's perceptions.
It's validating on so many levels and educating and thought-provoking. So the more people that think, I think that's where change comes from.
It's more subversive than the most overtly political work out there, because the message is delivered so quietly and with such a gentle touch that you don't know that your ideas might have shifted until after the fact.
I think photography purpose is basically to catalog, to show you what is there. And her project will be a major cataloging of contemporary gay families.
People hate what they don't know, which is why it's really important to show people who they're voting against, or who this body is, who this community is. Because by keeping us in the dark, it just perpetuates the hatred, because if you don't have an image that dispels stereotypes, then those stereotypes grow and grow.
Thank you for watching In the Life. To watch more from our exploration on the nature of hate and how you can get involved with issues raised in tonight's episode, visit our website at inthelifetv.org. You can also watch extended interviews, sign up for monthly airdate alerts, and download past episodes 24/7.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, David Bonnet Foundation, and these funders, and by the annual support of In the Life members like you.